Out of the blue, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was cancelled. Shockingly abrupt and puzzling in equal measure. Colbert's show is usually the highest rated of the late night shows, wasn't in a rating slump or anything like that. Indeed, it was the only one in the genre to have gained viewers in the current year. But CBS is owned by Paramount, which just did a deal with Trump, whereby they totally unnecessarily paid a $16 million settlement for a case that had no merit in order to get Trump to have the regulators permit the proposed merger with Skydance. And so the timing and the target, it has rather a lot of people speculating that Colbert's popular show was being killed off because he has been one of the most effective high-profile critics of the Trump administration. Which raises the question, is this a bit of one-off opportunism, just because suddenly the parent company was vulnerable, or is it the start of a process, clearing out the comedians and the critics who routinely more effectively skewer Trump and show up what he's doing with the dismantling of American democracy than any opposition politician ever manages to do? Both might be annoying and upsetting to some. The latter would obviously be a lot darker in terms of a place it's taking us to. So, let's discuss. The Late Show cancellation will happen at the end of May next year. Stephen Colbert announced that he had just been told the decision the day before he announced it. Now, on the one hand, CBS claims this was a purely financial decision, and there is enough context to provide cover for that claim. Advertising revenues for the late night shows generally has been declining over recent years. According to the ad data firm Guideline, the aggregate revenue earned by the late shows was $439 million in 2018, just $220 million last year. The formats for these shows, Colbert's and those hosted by Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon and the rest, they are expensive to produce. They could have explored changes to reduce the costs. After all, after James Corden left the Late Late Show and it was cancelled, it was replaced with After Midnight with Taylor Tomlinson, which was designed to be a lot cheaper to produce. Doesn't seem to be that a great deal of time was spent on exploring such options. Now, of course, it absolutely could be the entire story. Corporate executives fail to value a much-loved show, focus only on the bottom line, jump quickly to the conclusion to pull the plug. We've heard it before. But then you have this payment from Paramount to Trump, clearly designed to get him to give them the nod to the $8.4 billion merger with Skydance. The acquiring media company, Skydance, is controlled by David Ellison, the son of Larry Ellison of Oracle fame, who is also a Trump supporter. And like father, like son, presumably, because David Ellison has been spotted with President Trump at several UFC matches earlier this year. And it's worth noting that both the most prominent Trump-bashing CBS comedians, Colbert and Jon Stewart, had savaged that deal, calling out their own company for what seemed pretty transparently a bribe. So it's not surprising that a number of people have been quick to conclude that the declining revenues were really just used as the cover, the excuse. Actually, Trump really hates how effectively these sorts of comedians constantly skewer him. And Trump had mentioned that in addition to the $16 million, there were, quote, other aspects to the deal, which have never been detailed. And you can add to that the fact that, of course, President Trump posted a celebratory tweet the next day, saying this: "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings. I hear Jimmy Kimmel is next, has even less talent than Colbert." So it's not as though the President of the United States saw any sort of response to the political jesters as being beneath him. He absolutely revelled in seeing one of them shut down. So do we really think that the company trying desperately to curry favour with him in advance of this major deal, which it would be devastated if it hadn't been approved, do we really think that it wouldn't have been an obvious thing to add to sweeten that deal? Look at it this way. Quite often, when this sort of merger takes place, yes, costs get cut, but usually after the merger, while the two companies are rationalising, getting rid of duplication, when new eyes, unburdened with sentimentality, are poring over the balance sheet. But this happened before the merger, before the FCC approval. And City analysts are saying that with Ellison in charge of a merged group, Skydance would be expected to use its considerable resources to expand the content portfolio, to invest, to innovate, which doesn't sound like a company that would be panicking at declines in revenues to abandon a flagship show without at least trying to make it work. The statement that CBS put out clearly was fully aware of how this looks, because without prompting, it went straight into defensive mode, insisting that it was purely a financial decision and it is not related in any way to the show's performance, content, or other matters happening at Paramount. Now, Jon Stewart was asked about the future of The Daily Show just hours before the cancellation of Colbert's show was announced. His reply was that he just didn't know. Nobody had discussed it with him, and if it came to the worst, he said, we will land on our feet. Hard to know if Stewart will take comfort or offence from the fact that in celebrating the move, President Trump targeted Jimmy Kimmel as the next one who should go. And this is a small symptom of a bigger issue, because so far we've seen the Washington Post undergo something of an ideological conversion, although its actual reporting remains independent and relatively robust. We've seen ABC News unnecessarily settling a lawsuit with Trump, then this one with CBS. Billionaire owners of major media properties, within which independent journalism is usually just a small part of the whole, have apparently zero commitment or interest in preserving free criticism and political scrutiny. And in that environment, it's entirely natural to ask, was this actually more than a financial decision? And if so, was it a one-off? Or is this just the start of the process? Will the Trump administration be seeking out whatever leverage it can use against all the major media groups? Would it really be worth it to any of the billionaires involved to stand up to protect some relatively small figures in their media empire who just happen to be immensely talented at pricking the pomposity of the man in charge of the country? Countries that move away from democracy towards autocracy don't start by throwing comedians, journalists and authors in jail, sending them to gulags or acting all shocked if they fall from a fifth-floor hotel window. They start by using leverage against the bosses, the company owners, to get to the point where people just won't hire those comedians, those journalists, and nobody will publish them. Yes, in the age of the internet, they can move on to another platform for a show that's all their own, like Piers Morgan did and Tucker Carlson did. So too could Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert and the rest of them. But then the next stage would be the platform owners start to get pressure as well, because there's always leverage that can fall into the hands of a lawless government. And will it ever be in the interests or in the priorities of a billionaire to stand up on a point of principle? Let's put it this way. If we get to the end of Trump's second term, and we're still hearing about how ridiculous and stupid it was from the likes of Jon Stewart and John Oliver and Jimmy Kimmel, then fine, we'll know it was a random thing. If none of those voices are around in any mainstream accessible way, then all the little excuses that were made along the way as to why this one had to go, why this one was being shut down, terrible shame, but there you go, it's just this one. They were all cover. And this much we know, Trump is a would-be authoritarian. Trump also has an immensely thin skin and hates being mocked. So we should expect this just to be the start, because it does fit the facts.